Welcoming you to a life of awareness, the Presence Project is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kersner.
Hello and welcome to episode 94 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you wholeheartedly, sincerely, and deeply for joining me in this amazing, beautiful, lovely, profound present moment. The title and topic of today's podcast is Identifying Patterns with Presence. This is a topic that I have thought about speaking on for quite a while. When I work with patients at my clinic, I like to identify or help them identify the patterns that exist within their reality. This is also something that I do personally as I maintain a state of presence, because understanding patterns is quintessential to really understanding why you do the things you do, and then having the ability to work on those patterns or shift anything or any challenges that are taking place that might have an adverse effect on the way that you want your reality to look, to feel, to proceed. Pattern identification, in my humble opinion, is quintessential when you're on the path, when you're working on yourself, when you're trying to make improvements, when you're growing and shifting. And the only way to really identify patterns is to first of all establish a state of presence and then maintain a state of presence. Having the ability to be present provides you with a level of clarity. This level of clarity helps to give you the ability to push aside or see through or pierce the lens of the ego, which is that loud voice in your head, which is quite distracting and creates a lot of static. And it really provides a distraction for allowing you to be present and to see people, places, and things for what they are, for who they are, and how they are. Getting back to patterns, as human beings, we oftentimes will repeat certain behaviors. We'll keep on doing things over and over again because it's comfortable, even though it might be painful. We will do it over and over again because it's what we know. It's because what we're told. It's ultimately because we have neural pathways inside of our brain, and they get stuck in a loop, or what I call a skip. The ability to be present and ultimately to have clarity and to see these patterns for what they are gives you the wherewithal, the vision, the clarity to change, to grow. But you have to be able to see these patterns for what they are. Why are you doing the things you're doing? What's the intention behind them? Early on, when I work with patients and I ask them questions and they say they don't know, I love to hone in on that, because we have to understand why we do the things we do. And this is extremely important in regards to why we've developed patterns and why we keep repeating them even though they're not working, or they're giving us or creating more suffering, which is self-inflicted more often than not. As human beings that are indoctrinated into societal programming, which I call the matrix, we're trained for repetitive behavior as a control mechanism. And when we lose that ability to enact the repetition, we oftentimes suffer, because we become almost obsessed with the pattern that exists in our life. And the ego thrives in that. The ego is always there encouraging you to stay in that pattern, to keep repeating that behavior, even though there's a part of you that knows it's not good for you. But yet you keep doing it anyway. I mean, aside from the neural pathways that are established and deeply set in, the ego encourages me to keep doing the same things over and over again, even though the results that we're getting might not be positive or even neutral. It could be potentially negative. But again, it's the knowingness and the comfort of the pattern itself that for some reason makes us feel better about what we're doing, even though it doesn't feel good. And you might think that's a bit of a conflict, and it is. So when you zoom out enough and you start looking at the patterns that exist within your reality, oftentimes it's a bit startling and humbling, and it calls into question a lot of the things that you do on a daily basis that are patterns. And this is really a tough moment for a lot of people because you start to own the things that you've done and the things that you're doing, and you start seeing them with a lot more clarity. And now you have the ability to change them. You might not choose to do so, but the beauty of presence is to be able to identify the behavioral patterns that you've enacted over a lengthy period of time that have helped forge your identity. You've become identified with the patterns that you've enacted and do religiously, ceremoniously, every day. And my insistence to you as you build and maintain a state of presence is to look at the patterns that exist in your life. Why do you keep doing these things over and over again? Why do these things keep coming up over and over again? Because patterns are not just the things that you do, they're the things that are done for you, they're the things that are done to you, depending upon your perception. And understanding and zooming out enough to see these things with clarity so that you can learn and grow and shift away from the patterns. A lot of times patterns are taught to us at a very young age. They're programmed into us by parents, by role models, by teachers, by people who weren't aware enough of their own patterns and subsequently passed their patterns on to you. The ability right now is for you to break the cycle, to wake up and see it for what it is, and to be able to shift away from it, to stop the patterns, which ultimately will empower you. But yet, at the time when you're starting to identify it, it could feel a little scary because you don't know what it is or what life would look like outside of that pattern that you're currently existing within. This is a very important topic because it gives you an extremely important understanding of who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it and why the things are happening in your reality. So it is appropriate for you to take some time to sit in a state of observation without judgment, to see patterns that have been existing inside of your reality, to see them for what they are, to understand why you've kept on doing the same things over and over again, to see the results that it's garnered, to understand that the time is right for you to end those patterns, to create a new reality for yourself, one that involves presence and intention, not repetition just because that's what you've always done or that's all you know. That's not a good enough reason to keep doing something. There's no intention there. There's just repetition mindlessly. And that has very little to do with being present. Being present allows you to see the things that you're doing and understand why you're doing them. Only your ego or that loud voice in your head wants you to keep doing things mindlessly without reason, because ultimately you will suffer. Whether it's self-inflicted or not, it doesn't make a difference. Patterns need to be seen, they need to be examined, they need to be observed, and oftentimes they need to be ended. So I hope that a topic like pattern identification is helpful. What I really hope for is that you can see your patterns for what they are and bring an end to many of them, to understand why you're doing the things you're doing, to always have a reason for when someone asks you or you ask yourself or you're observing what you're doing, that there's a reason for it. It doesn't matter what the reason may be. that's up to you. But there has to be a reason for what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what the intention is behind the action or the behavior. That is a much better way, in my humble opinion, of navigating this reality. So I want to thank you for sharing these present seconds with me. It is always an honor to be able to share this knowledge, these universal truths, this wisdom with you. It's just another tool in your toolbox as you awaken to the present moment, to realize that many of the patterns that you've been repeating over and over again no longer serve you. That the time is right to make the changes because you have the courage and the wherewithal to be the cycle breaker, to end the patterns that were passed down to you, that you thought were normal, that are not healthy. And we could say that, we could see it without being judgmental. We could have objectivity. And that's really what it takes, to see it for what it is. And we do that in the present moment. As always, I wish you nothing but peace.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.